Radhe Radhe. Today is Saturday, 25th January 2025, and here we are to present to you this recap video for today's Bhagavad Gita study session. As we continue along our journey of chapter 10, we're learning and hearing more from Sri Krishna through Arjun, through Swamiji's commentary about God's Vibhuti, all the different opulences. Let's bring up the slides and see what we covered today. So as you all saw in class, we got through three verses, chapter 10, verses 16, 17, and 18. We did have our recap quiz covering last time's content from a couple of weeks ago. So that was chapter 10, verses 14 and 15. Please do look at the description for the video to get the usual link to the community portal, where for free, of course, you can get all these slides, videos, and other relevant material for your learning benefit. So with that, let's look at chapter 10, verse 16 and 17, which appear together in Swamiji's book, Holy Bhagavad Gita. Vaktum arhasya sheshena divyahyatma vibhutayah yabhir vibhutibhir lokan imam stvam vyapya tishthasi. Katham vidyamaham yogins tvam sada parichintayan keshu keshu cha bhaveshu chintyosi bhagavan maya. So chapter 10 verses 16 and 17, as I mentioned, come together. Chapter 10 verse 16 has the catchphrase details desired. With alliteration and more alliteration, chapter 10, verse 17 has the catchphrase meditators' mechanics. In essence, in these two verses, Arjun is, of course, seeking some more details. He desires details on Sri Krishna's glories, his opulences, his vibhutis, and he wants to know how a meditator should meditate upon the Lord. How should a devotee perform his or her meditation? In what forms should that be? So we look at Swamiji's commentary for these two verses after looking at a couple of important Sanskrit verses. So if you all remember, we had the recap quiz question today on chapter 10, verses 14 and 15. There was the important fun one on the acceptance speech. In that same vein, you can go back and take a look at the slides. Let's see this word here, asheshena, completely, because Arjun truly wishes to know the full extent, the complete story, all the details. Asheshena, completely. So that's chapter 10, verse 16. And then certainly let's look at, the catchphrase, meditators' mechanics. So the verb here, meditating. Let's look at parichintayan. Chinta, you understand? Chintaya is to do with some kind of thought or meditation, the mind. So parichintayan is meditating. So two important words from these two verses. And then indeed, Arjun is asking Sri Krishna very politely, please describe to me your divine opulences by which you pervade all the worlds and reside in them. He uses an appellation, yogin, yogi, or supreme master of yoga, and he asks, how may I know you? Because we can't know God by our self-effort alone. And while meditating, in what forms can I think of you, O Supreme Divine Personality? So as Swamiji explains here, and we saw in class, Yog here refers to Yog Maya, God's divine power we have talked about at length, especially from chapter 7, but even earlier in chapter 4. And Yogi, Yogin here, is the master of Yog Maya. So that's this important Sanskrit appellation or term here, Yogin, the supreme master of Yog Maya. So Arjun's asking, how can he know him, Sri Krishna? How can he meditate upon him? In what forms can he think of him? So again, Swamiji says that all this in chapter 10 is Arjun seeking to know about Sri Krishna's transcendental, majestic opulences, his vibhutis. Indeed, the chapter itself is called Vibhuti Yog. Yog through appreciating the infinite opulences of God. So Arjun has acknowledged, he understands with full faith that Sri Krishna is the supreme. He has full eminence and the paramount position, and he wants to learn more and more about his glories, his pastimes, etc. So that is why Arjun asks as please, politely. In fact, Swamiji uses the word implore. Arjun implores because he is beseeching, he is with real humility making a prayer, a supplication to the Lord. So he implores Sri Krishna, and Swamiji quotes, it is Arjun sort of saying he's very curious, he's inquisitive to know about these vibhutis, these divine manifestations, so that he can become an even better devotee, right? He can have unfaltering, unwavering devotion, unfaltering, unwavering bhakti. But then further, he knows, he states, this cannot be done alone. This revelation cannot happen without Sri Krishna's grace. So, therefore, how can I perceive you? How can Arjun perceive Sri Krishna? In what forms can he think of him? As we mentioned in class, there is a link in your spare time section. Take a look at these links. One of them in particular is for a video by Swamiji addressing this concept of meditating on the Lord. We all, of course, know the answer that is connected to Roop Dhyan meditation. Many of us perhaps practice that as well, but I do think it's very enlightening to hear this initial, couple of minutes, go through the whole video, but very early on in the video itself, Swamiji gives a qualifier on this aspect of meditation, the form, the deity. He says a very important sentence and repeats it. And that is really to help us all solidify our understanding of meditating on the Lord. So that is chapter 10, verses 16 and 17. Next, let us look at chapter 10, verse 18. विस्तरेणात्मनो योगं विभूतिं च जनार्दन भूयः कथय तृप्तिर्हि शृण्वतो नास्ति मे मृतम्. So, chapter 10, verse 18 has the catchphrase nighttime nectar. We explained in class, we see in the commentary coming up as well. We are indeed getting to hear and learn Sri Krishna's words that are like nectar. Nighttime, of course, because spiritually for many of us, it is still a season of darkness or ignorance, even as we make our incremental steps towards the Lord. So, this nighttime remedy is, of course, more and more descriptions, details, glories, pastimes of the Lord, all of which are like nectar. And the more we get it, we saw in the commentary in class, the more our thirst gets quenched, yet our thirst also increases, which is this indeed special attribute of this spiritual wisdom and nectar. So as we get more and more of that, we of course will go towards brightness and daytime. But for now, this is of course nighttime nectar. There's always some level of darkness or ignorance, and we seek to get towards light. So here in chapter 10, verse 18, an important word that we can look at is, we've seen vibhutim, of course, we understand that is opulences. I think let's look at vistarena, that is in detail. Again, Arjun doesn't want the concise or summary version. He really would like to learn in detail so that he can be that, most ideal student and devotee that each of us perhaps is also trying to be. And then we know this one, Shinvataha, but it is to do with hearing. No doubt we also know Amrit, but we can revisit it. Amritam is nectar. That's again very, very essential here. So Arjun is telling and asking Sri Krishna, please explain in detail about your divine glories and manifestations. He uses an appellation that we've seen in chapter 1 or 2, O Janardhan, and he says at the very end, he can never tire of hearing Sri Krishna's nectar. So we explained in class, Swamiji has mentioned here, if you look at the phrase hearing your nectar, it's actually a shorter version of hearing your words that are like nectar. And this technique in literature is known as atishayokti, or in English, the close reference is hyperbole, a statement of extreme expression. We gave examples in class. If you look at least from an exaggeration standpoint or extreme expression, we often might say, oh, that bag weighs a ton. It doesn't weigh a ton, but the point is it is extremely heavy. I'm so hungry, famished, starving that I can eat 3 buffets. Again, I'm not going to be able to do that or choose to do that, but the point is, I am extremely hungry in that statement I'm saying. So these are examples of hyperbole that we may have come across in some form or fashion. Atishayukti, even deeper than that in Sanskrit grammar, is to do, of course, with also swallowing of words. So if you look at that here, this important word like is making the connection between words and nectar. So words like nectar. That like is getting swallowed, which is why it becomes hearing your nectar. So hearing your words that are like nectar is simply hearing your nectar. So that's the technique, Atishayokti, hyperbole. Arjun is using that to refer to Sri Krishna's words of wisdom. He uses contextually Janardhan. We've seen that before, as we mentioned. It refers to he who looks after the public, or truly a benevolent person, someone who really cares about the good of everyone and provides relief to everyone. So, O Janardhan, O Sri Krishna, tell me please more about your divine glories. And I'm stating and admitting I can never tire of hearing your words that are like nectar. This is all coming from Arjun. So Swamiji explains nectar, we've seen churned butter, we've seen nectar, we've talked about it through videos and lectures. This is Arjun who has been drinking, partaking of these spiritual great words of wisdom that are Sri Krishna's nectar. And in fact, it is ambrosial that we saw as well from the classical Latin to do with heavenly divine gods. It is this nectar that is coming to Arjun's ears, coming to our ears, making us thirsty for even more, spiritually thirsty for more. And then we get that nectar, we feel satiated, but not completely. So we want more. We have our thirst increasing, unlike in the physical sense. And that is the strength of all this wisdom. Swamiji quotes from these, sages of the Naimisharanya forest we mentioned. So from the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is 1.1.19. Essentially, those who are devoted to Lord Krishna never tire of hearing descriptions of his divine pastimes. So that nectar you get is such that the more it is relished, the more it increases. So you are thirsty. In the real world, you'll drink water and eventually be satiated and feel content. In the spiritual one, there is no greed. It is actually true. We desire more and more of that nectar. So that also connects us to the flyer we had seen. What is that special thing that Arjun can never tire of hearing? Indeed, it is Sri Krishna's nectar, his words of wisdom that are like nectar. So we have the nectar or honey pot here, and we have music, melody representing ears and hearing. All this melodious wisdom is nectar, and Arjun can never tire of hearing that. I hope and trust each of us feels the same way too. So that gets us towards the end of this content. Again, chapter 10, verses 16, 17, and 18. As we mentioned, go through the portal, go through the slides, the recap quiz, go through the videos in your spare time section, and of course, come prepared for the recap quiz for next week. In the meantime, those of you who get a chance, it is, of course, soon going to be Republic Day in India. So we invite you later today, that's Dallas time, 9 p.m. Central, Sunday, 26th January, Republic Day, 8:30 a.m. India time, for our Bhagavad Gita recitation session. We unite and march and continue hearing and learning this splendor of the Bhagavad Gita on an extra special day, of course. So with that, we get towards the end of this video. Again, please do study hard, look at the material, and when we meet you, it's going to be a new month. So that's Saturday, 1st February 2025, 8 a.m. Central Time, 7:30 p.m. India time. Till then, thank you so much as always. Radhe Radhe.